The body of water we're on today, super clear. I mean, I can see 12-ish foot right now, and this is actually some of the dirtier water on this place. And so I'm trying to match the forage that's in here. A little bit of research tells me there's a lot of trout in this place. And with how clear this water is, going to a super translucent color a lot of times can oftentimes make those bass actually commit to the bait versus throwing like the opaque, just a regular rainbow trout. We'll take the Arashi Glide, throw it in the ghost trout pattern, and it's still the right hues and color patterns, but a much more, I guess, less invasive approach to these fish. And we're just gonna throw this around a little bit, see if we can get any follows, get any looks. A lot of times people think that when you're talking big glide baits, big swim baits, that you have to just be bombing them out over these long points and just making really long casts. But when we were designing this bait, I really wanted to design it to be able to fish it in and around cover, right? Be able to control it. And so I fish it in a lot of the same places that guys would normally throw swim baits, crank baits. In this clear water, those fish will come from a long ways to look at a glide. And with being able to control that bait and twitch it back and forth left and right, with all these laydowns, I can work that bait in and around. So I'll flip this bait, I'll make a little roll cast and fish it in and around this cover in close quarters. I don't have to make those big, long, crazy casts to be able to get these fish to kind of come up and look at this bait. You know, just, oh, I got him right there. That's a good start. Yeah! Tell me that's not awesome. Pitching the Storm Arashi Glide in ghost trout. We just got done talking about that. These largemouth, they're pulling up, staging, fishing it just like we would any other normal bait, and they're just crushing it. I mean, tell me that wasn't awesome. That was so addicting. So cool. I get a pair of pliers. He's got hooks all up in his face. That's how you want him to eat it. So, I mean, that is a beautiful largemouth. You can tell pre-spawn, super fat, healthy. Eating the Trout Glide. A little bit of research, a little Lake Master study. Get a few pictures of this fish, and then we'll let her go. So hopefully we got something rolling. Hey everyone, Brandon Palaniuk here with Bass UTV, and I'm gonna dive into talking about big glide baits. Right here I've got the Storm Arashi Glide, and you can see I have it in a ghost trout pattern. We're specifically gonna talk about attacking these fisheries where the primary forage is going to be trout. And that could be brown trout, could be rainbow, cutthroat, could be stalker trout. I mean, you name it. But when you talk about trout as a primary forage species, those bass are going to live differently because they are given a different rule book than bass that may be chasing blueback herring or shad or alewives or some other type of bait fish. So a trout is primarily a cold water species, meaning that in colder water temperatures, they're not afraid to get up shallow and cruise. A lot of times in the low 40s, those trout will get up high on the surface when you get those sunny days, and they'll just kind of cruise around. And that's what makes a swim bait in those situations so deadly, and especially a glide bait. When those trout get up and they just start kind of roaming, a lot of times they're not swimming in a straight line. They'll kind of swim over here and they look, and then they kind of swim over here and look around, and they're kind of moving back and forth. And that's exactly what this glide does, right? It's gonna swim sideways, and then it's gonna kick over here. It's gonna kick over here. And so you're really triggering two different types of reactions. One, a bait fish or a trout specifically that is just kind of roaming around. And to a bass, that signals in their brain that that is an easy meal, right? Because that trout doesn't know that bass is there. He thinks, oh, this trout's just swimming along, and he doesn't have to chase it, right? The bass, they're not dumb. He knows that it's a lot easier to just swim up, sneak up behind something and eat it versus trying to run something down that is swimming away 100 miles an hour. So that triggers one reaction. The other thing it does is it also can imitate a trout that's kind of dying, right? Some of these trout will start to die, and that also triggers another reaction. Those fish, the bass or any predator fish, is really dialed in and tuned in, right? Over years and years of evolution, they know that a dying bait fish or a dying trout is going to signal in their brain that that's an easy meal, and they take advantage of it. They're opportunistic feeders. Now, where I fish this is going to depend on what available cover is in a body of water, and then also the time of year, right? So if we're talking springtime, I may be concentrated more toward the bank, channel swings with good laydowns, good rock cover. But anytime I'm fishing this, I'm always looking for ambush points. All right, so we start talking about a little bit later in the year as we start moving off. Those trout may be moving a little bit deeper. We may be fishing this over deeper, long extending points that have a real steep drop, maybe a bluff end, or maybe it could still be laydowns or docks that are up over deeper water where those fish are suspended. But those ambush points is really the key for swim bait fishing. And when you learn the trout and how they move and how they migrate, that's really going to clue you into those places that you need to look at. Then you're able to pull up your Lake Master charts on your Humminbirds or on your phone, and look and start to identify those key places and then go attack the type of cover that's there. And the big thing with swim bait fishing is making sure, really just like any other technique, that we have the proper equipment. So like I said, this is a Storm Arashi Glide. It's a thinner profile, right? A lot of your shad ones are a real tall profile. But when we're talking trout, we want that thinner profile. It mimics that body shape and body style in the way that those swim. Then I've got it attached to a snap so that it's got freedom of movement. And then I typically throw it on either a 20-pound or a 25-pound Seagar Tatsu. And why that's important is that you want the shock value of those bigger fish, and a lot of times they'll eat it close to the boat, and you want that big heavy line for the power, but being very supple and limp allows that bait to have more freedom of movement. It's going to look a lot more natural. It gives me as an angler a lot more control over that bait. So that's why I go with the Tatsu. And if you guys want to kind of learn a little bit more about how we're figuring these fish out, how we're breaking them down and breaking these bodies of water down, make sure you guys get on there, get on Bass UTV and find where we're talking about breaking down new waters, how we're using our electronics. There's a lot more knowledge to be had. Just like there's always more fish to catch, there's always more Bass UTV.